The Joy in Goal Setting podcast is proud to be partnered with and brought to you by The Ideal Life. The Ideal Life offers a multimedia platform that is focused on cultivating a growth mindset. Here, you'll find a supportive community of coaches, valuable online resources, and transformative courses aimed at helping you lead a more gratifying and joyful life. Ready to take the next step in your personal growth journey? Visit theideallife.com to explore their wealth of resources and join their vibrant, growing community today. Welcome to the Joy in Goal Setting podcast, where we empower individuals to discover their purpose, achieve their goals, and experience a joyful life through encouraging conversation. I am your host, Hudson Dodds. Today, we're sitting down with Karen DeLoach. Karen is an artist, author, and speaker. We discuss how art is not just for experts, using art as therapy, and how to engage your right brain. Karen, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Hudson. It's my privilege, believe me.
Awesome. So we're in the new year. I've been asking folks, oftentimes there's things that are scary of the new year or things that are particularly exciting. I was wondering for you in 2024, maybe one thing that is exciting you, some potential or something that's maybe, new, or something that's kind of scary that's unknown for you in 2024.
Well, in just a month, I'm turning 70. So that's a new decade that I'm kind of shocked. You know, I just read in the doctor's office, it said, getting older happens so fast. I don't feel old, but, you think of 70 as being grandmas. I am a grandma, by the way. But 2024 has so much potential for change, and I am passionate about being an agent of change for your generation. I have grandchildren. I want to see things so much better for them than we've experienced these last few decades. But yeah, I'm very hopeful, and I love podcasting. I love that it's pick it up and go. You can take the message and put your earbuds in and travel and do whatever you need to do to listen and learn. So
I love that. That's awesome. Potential. That's super exciting. So, where are you from? What school did you go to, or schools plural? And what are you doing currently?
Well, those are great questions. I'm a Jersey girl. I was Karen from Jersey. My family's from New Jersey, but we're all in the South now. I've been here half my life, so I'm officially a Southerner, even if Jersey is my roots. But arts have always been in my family. I'm an artist and a filmmaker, actor, author now, and the arts were really important in my family. My father, Irish storyteller, who was on vaudeville from New York, from Jersey City. And so that was in me. And, I talk to my students. I am a teacher. I teach art, and I've been to many colleges and have BFA and MA and another certificate in filmmaking. So school has been a big deal because I love to learn and I love to teach. But teaching really has taught me a lot about what people need. And I'm obviously very right brain, arts oriented. And I've found, because we ended up homeschooling our children, who were all musicians and artists and actors, that didn't do well sitting still for 7 hours a day in classes. They weren't thriving. I knew they weren't stupid, that there was the situation was the problem, not them, but they were pretty convinced they were stupid because they couldn't do well. So we brought them home and we started co-ops, and we got help for who they were, to train them up to be what worked for them, and they're professional musicians.
Cool.
They even teach English. They live in Germany, and they teach English, which is just mind-boggling too. Their parents who were like scratching their heads, are they ever going to be able to do this?
Get out, yeah.
And now they teach it, and they laugh about it too. But they're professional musicians, and they went there and to produce music and fell in love with German girls, and now I have a little half-German baby. So you're talking about learning new things. For me, it's German. Sprechen Deutsch. That's my new thing, is teaching through Duolingo how to speak to my grandchildren.
Duolingo's amazing.
It is. I love it.
It's fantastic. Our kids have been doing it every day since August.
Wow.
Yeah, but 9 and 10-year-old. We're going to Madrid at the end of March, so they've been committed to it, and they love it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, learning new things, right?
Yeah, I made my third son. I made them take Spanish in school, even though I didn't speak it, and he is working as a contractor where they're constructing and landscaping, doing landscape construction now. Their whole crew are Spanish speakers, don't speak any English. And he's not only remembered his Spanish, but he's learned how to be fluent with them.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it is cool. It's exciting.
That's awesome. So you are an artist at heart, an educator at heart, it sounds like. How do you see those two things being maybe complementary, or how have you seen those things kind of like play into each other for yourself?
That's a good question too. You know, we talked a little bit before about left brain, right brain. And we have an education system in the West that's very left brain oriented, which is critical thinking, memorization, order, very important things, timeliness, chronology, all good things, nothing wrong with them. However, it tends to be to the detriment, even trivializing of the skills of our other half of our hemisphere, our brain, our right brain. Like if you ask 5-year-olds, a class of 5-year-olds, you guys like to color, to dance, to sing, to bang on drums, to run around the place? Yes, yes, yes. But ask a room of 15-year-olds that same question. It's about 10% say yes. So what happened in that 10 years? Did they lose the capacity for creativity? Did they somehow become convinced they couldn't color, they couldn't sing, they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that? Or was it just so ignored that it wasn't important enough in the curriculum to develop for them? That makes me sad.
Yeah.
As an artist.
Yeah, we even call oftentimes the arts like extracurricular, right? It's like outside of it.
It's even available, anymore. Yeah, and we live in a beautiful city here in Charleston, South Carolina, that has wonderful galleries almost on every block and museums. And I can't tell you how many of my students have never been to one. So I, of course, make them go. They get the privilege of taking a selfie and proving, and then they don't have to take the final quiz. Anything not to take a quiz, right?
Yeah.
But they get exposed, and one of my goals is not just to teach them about Rembrandt and Michelangelo and Vincent van Gogh, which I do, but also, what do you like? Most of us can tell you what we like in music, but can we tell what we like in art?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't even have art on their walls. They wouldn't even know what to do. And so that's one of my jobs, is not just to teach them the history of Western art, which is rich and beautiful and amazing, but also, what do you think about it?
Yeah.
They're going to remember what makes them feel. So what do you feel about it?
Yeah. How have you seen your students over time being not just exposed, like you're saying, not just exposure to art, but actually taking in what they're seeing and then making it their own in some ways? How have you seen that change, maybe you haven't, other areas of their life or their studies, or how have you seen that kind of come together to make them more of a whole person?
Well, I have a story about that, if you'd like to hear a very specific story. This is in the homeschooling years, and I had parents bring students to my studio, and I got the parents to do art too, found lots of talented parents. But a lot of times they brought them because they weren't thriving in academics. Either, in this case, this particular student had ADHD and dyslexia. Writing was torment for him. Reading was torment for him. And he was feeling stupid. And his mom knew he wasn't stupid. She brought him to the studio, and it wasn't very long to find out this child is an artist. He could sculpt anything he wanted. He could draw. He could paint. I started entering his work into the Fair Youth Competition, which is the largest youth competition in the Low Country. He started winning. And eventually, when he was in high school, he started thriving in his academics, by the way. When he started making those neural connections between left brain and right brain, it helped him with his deficiencies in his learning skills. And he was getting more confidence in his abilities, so he ended up graduating from high school. But before he did, I entered him another time, and it's a batik he did in my studio, and he won not just first place, but best in show, got an award. Said he wanted to go to Disney World, and his parents took him there, and he got an infection that led to a brain infection, which caused a stroke and paralyzed him on the right side. So here he is, not quite 18 years old, paralyzed, and it was devastating to the whole family. 4 months he was in rehab to be even able to leave the hospital. Well, his mom brought him right to the studio. He could barely walk. He couldn't talk. He couldn't use his right hand. So I thought, well, let's just try it left-handed.
Yeah.
You know, what do I know? I'm not a trained art therapist,
Right.
you know, but I know this young man, and in a very short amount of time, he was as good with his left hand as he had been with his right hand, to the point where his neurosurgeon called me. Now, picture this. I've never called someone's art teacher before, right? Extracurricular, you know, triviality, right? What are you doing with David? Because not only is he as good with his weak hand than he was his right, but he's better than I am, and I'm a surgeon. What are you doing? It's causing connections between his left and right brain. He's getting healing on his right side. Of course, that was news. I'm like, wow, yay! You know, that's awesome. Right. You know, I'm not the scientist here, but you know, now David walks and talks, and you wouldn't know what he'd been through these last few years. He still has trouble with his right hand, but he not only draws left-handed, but he can left-handed. So it's like he was able to compensate. You know, what they're learning about brain science. There's even a neuroscience called neuroarts, because they're finding that when people learn these new skills of drawing and painting and observation, that they're actually connecting new parts of their brain. Even at Walter Reed Army Hospital, they took in a lot of these wounded veterans that had gone as far as they could with physical improvement, but they brought them in and they started testing what they could do to help them emotionally and mentally. And they came out, and almost the number one thing they enjoyed was art. And these are not people identifying as artists.
Right.
They're people that just were trying to, it distracted them. You know, and one more story of the healing power of art. And I was an adult who took my classes and was very good, and then she got a terrible diagnosis of cancer, breast cancer, given 6 months longevity. And I had a great big hands-on project. It was a room installation where I was going to be doing hundreds of ceramic pieces. I knew she was good. I said, come help me. Come to the studio and help me with the show, which was in 9 months. She said, I don't even know if I'm going to be here. And she did all the medical things. She did the
of course.
chemo, radiation.
Right.
She did the surgery and reconstruction. Meanwhile, every day she could, she was in the studio with me, working with her hands. We made a great show. It's called Taste and C-Suite Shop. Matter of fact, some of the pieces I was selling in this gallery right down here on the same block as you, like cakes and cupcakes and candies and cookies and trays. Anyway, we had a great show, and she was there. And 10 years later, she is still cancer-free.
Wow.
And I talked to her recently, and I said, I want to use your story. And she said, tell my story, because I know that having something to look forward to, number one, something to focus on that was beautiful and uplifting and fun, really kept me from despair. And we know emotional connections between physical healing and life, you know, being restored physically. And she's still cancer-free. So I guess it's not quite 10 years, but almost. But
it's amazing. One, it fits and aligns right with the neuroscience that we found with, as you said, pursuing something on a daily basis, on a consistent basis. And we found is what you're saying, which is that when you pursue a purpose or you pursue something on a consistent basis where we call deliberately practicing something. So when it's like consistent and you're, like you talk about, it's like almost that flow state people try and get into. When that happens, you begin to rewire the connections in your brain. Exactly right, and it makes sense, right? And so it's the philosophy we talk about can be applied to everything. What if it's art, or if it's sports, or if it's reading, or if it's anything, right? Yeah. Any one of our life roles, even like being a better person at home, whatever that might be. As we're pursuing that, and we reach those little goals, and art is like perfect. I'm a sports guy. And it aligns with this mentality, and I think art is very, very similar in that when you're doing things with your hands, it's almost like little mini goals that you're accomplishing on a consistent basis to get to maybe a final piece or a final show or something that you're looking forward to and you're pursuing. That constantly is giving us those positive chemicals to where it aligns us with who we want to be, and we can keep on going. We have that reason to survive. Our founder has a very similar story of this mother in cancer, and it's the same kind of idea of applying this framework, this philosophy, has allowed her to be cancer-free because of it.
wow.
It's amazing. It's amazing how when we have that purpose and we pursue it and we reach those little goals and then big goals, and we continue on that path, like how everything just opens up and we can do more things. It's not the only thing we're doing. It's not just art, but it opens up, like you were saying before with the other student, a whole new life, a whole new world. It's amazing.
It is. And I was a sports kid, too, did gymnastics and then played soccer in college. So I love sports. And my students are always surprised when they come in, and the first thing I do is take a plastic ball and start playing catch with them. Guess what drawing is? Eye-hand coordination. So one of the first things we do, I have a little 2- and 3-year-old grandchildren, ball, which is the international favorite toy of the world, throw and catch. It's the first things you do. I went on a missions trip a year ago, and we brought a whole bunch of soccer balls, not inflated, flat balls that we could pump with air, and they just thought they were in heaven. They all got real soccer balls. We had an arts competition we did in Uganda, and it was actually a talent show that was amazing, and got to meet them, and I'm actually doing film school with them. They have internet, and every time they have internet, we get to do film school. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
So when did you go from, loving art, which you always have, of course, and you still do, from there, what path led you to really diving deep and getting interested in the science behind what you're doing?
Well, part of it was seeing the power of art to heal, seeing the evidence, with some of my students, for one thing. And when I started teaching art in college, and using textbooks that art history people had written. Now, these are people that love art. They love art history. And I saw the disengagement with my students through these textbooks. I barely used the textbooks. I used so much more of my own material. To the point during COVID, I actually decided to write a book. A publisher approached me. And I thought, I know what these kids really need, to propel them into a world that doesn't say, I don't know anything about art, I don't care about art.
Right.
And a lot of them are athletic. They come to me, a lot of them are still in high school. Now the people taking dual credit. Well, art is one of the classes they bring them into. And I want them to have a blast and remember it and stir up their own creativity. Sure. So one of my books is How to Draw, and when it's exercises, but the first one is Throw and Catch a Ball. That shocks them every time. What? What does this have to do with art? Because I teach fundamentals, how to draw. I have a book, How to Paint. Because this is my story. I was very athletic, and theater was my minor. And art wasn't my strongest suit. I loved to draw. I was good in drawing, but not in painting. And I was a painting major. And this is after the abstract expressionist era, when my teachers had all been raised, right? And I just want to paint people and scenery and make it look fantastic and beautiful. And they wanted me to be deeper than I was at 18 and 19. Sorry, this is what you see is what you get. But they used 4-letter words to describe my paintings. They didn't really teach me to paint. They gave me a room and said, come back in 6 weeks, try again. I tried to be esoteric, and I got passed because I did things that weren't painting, using my mind. But I became convinced I wasn't good enough. So that's one reason why I went to graduate school in sculpture and learned ceramic, which I love ceramic. I do. I am a hands-on. They're right. I love hands-on. But for 20 years, I kept trying to paint. And I couldn't finish. I'd get to that point where my skills just didn't quite
get you to the level.
No, exactly right. And I was moving, and I was looking at all these canvases. I started having these beautiful little baby boys, and I wanted to paint them so bad, and they were just not good enough. And that's the way I felt about myself until I got a mentor. A man who had been to the Chicago Art Institute back in the day when they taught the fundamentals, and he actually taught me how to paint. And he helped me become not just a better artist, but a better teacher, because that's what I teach, how to paint. I don't care what kind of art you end up doing, but you're going to learn how to paint, how to use the color wheel to find out complements, and how to, even if, like, for my husband, who was a master gardener, he learned so much learning about painting and learning about color that helped him when he was putting beds in and arranging. And he's a decorator anyway. I make the stuff, he puts them up. He figures out where to put them. So that everybody's got something in them. I believe we're all creative. Why would we have half our brain, that is wired to be creative if we weren't supposed to be?
Right.
And you talk about discipline and consistency and that kind of hard work. And for most of us right-brain people, it sounds like you're going to strangle me right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
No, that's right. That's right. That's right.
Those are so left brain.
Right.
And it's not that there's anything wrong with those things, but what we have has been so trivialized.
Right.
And not monetized, trust me.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of us went to graduate school so we could become teachers or professors, make some kind of living to support ourselves. And I can talk about art history when the church or business people or the Medicis supported artists, to enable them to create these incredible masterpieces.
Yeah.
What's it going to take in our culture? And for me, I'm like, all right, one student at a time. I have 75 right now, just started school last week. 75, and I'm going to open up their eyes to the beauty of their creation, the beauty of the world of art, and find something that they can love and be responsive to.
Yeah.
And I make them pick something out of the book. It's a 630-page book, 1,800 images.
Yeah.
I know some of them will never read one word of the book, but maybe they'll look at the pictures and find something they love, something that'll spark something in them. And then I make them do exercises. My first exercise is after throwing and catching a ball is you can't look at your paper. You have to draw without looking at your paper. Guess what that does? Engages the right brain. Shuts that left brain critic off. And I said, we are creating a safe space with no criticism. Guess where criticism comes from? Judgment. It's all left brain skills, right? But for the right brain, which is sensitive, intuitive, imaginative, comes up with inventions and new ways to put things together, it doesn't thrive in a critical atmosphere. I'm a best case scenario right here.
Yeah.
I believed them. They were the professors. I'm not good enough.
Right.
I didn't know I could become good enough with the right trainers. I'm not blaming them. That's who they were,
Right.
and they were all artists too, and which is what I realized when I wrote the art history and appreciation textbook is I'm going to write one from the right brain. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's still when they were born and a little bit of that, but it's mostly gosh, he fought disease or death of a sibling or mental illness or poverty or war in his country. What was going on in his or her world and what were they fighting? Or how did she get to be famous because women weren't supposed to be artists, in her generation? So, they hear these stories and they start getting excited. And we are connected through our stories, I think.
I think you're right. When you talk about mentor, kind of led you down this path to a degree, or at least opened you up, right? And we use a liberal approach in terms of the word coach, and we think about coaching as anyone who is helping you become the person, like the best version of yourself, which is, you could argue is a teacher, right, for sure. Yes, when I was talking about discipline, it was more what you just said, which is like perfect, which is this idea that you said one student at a time. And so we look at the discipline. It's really the discipline. I mean, it is, but it's as you're doing 5 minutes of something, it's one step forward, and you're building that habit, that skill, which is making those connections that allows you to be more the person that you want to be. So in our perspective, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's being inspired by something and then saying, but now what? Now what do I do with it? And taking one student at a time, one step at a time towards being that best version of yourself. And so I know that you're doing some coaching and you talk about teaching as well. What has that been like for you? Take us kind of on that journey.
Yeah, I call myself a creativity specialist. Somebody gave me that title. I thought I like that because there are so many parts of it. And I hardly know any arts people that aren't good in more than one arts thing. Mm-hmm. Do you know any sports people that only do one sport or they only like one sport?
They're not really good at it if they do.
Well, yeah, that's true, but they still love more than one sport, And even my family's very sports. My mother watches professional football still. It's usually 92 in a couple weeks. So it's in our culture for sure, the sports, and they really are connected. The arts, I think people have less connection with, but reading these scientists the last couple of years, some of them say 15, 18, 20 minutes a day is all it takes.
Yep.
And it's so easy. And this is the thing, I remember reading a study where in office buildings, the smokers that had to go out to smoke, they were finding they had better heart than the ones sitting at their desk the whole time. So what was going on besides smoking that caused those smokers to have those 15, 20 minutes. They're out there dealing with the weather, talking to other people, taking a puff, look at the sky. I'm not advocating smoking, believe me.
Right.
But there was something to taking a break. Mm-hmm. And now, reading other brain scientists, they're saying you've got to rest your brain. Every 90 minutes you should. And those of us on the computer a lot, which is what you do now when you're mentoring people online, is you're on the computer a lot.
Sure.
And I know I have to make myself, I ride my bike a couple times a day, to get up and move, and it helps your brain.
Yeah.
Now, here's an interesting one. Singing in the shower, okay? You sing in the shower? You know anybody who sings in the shower?
I used to all the time. I don't anymore.
Well, guess what happens when you sing in the shower? You are using your right brain. Because you're rub-a-dub-dub, scrubbing the tub, and you're not thinking about anything. You're just having a good song, just having a good song. Whatever song is in your head, you're singing it. And you get out, you're dressing, and something comes to mind. Maybe there was something you were pondering, earlier, a situation or a problem at work, or something comes to mind. And you don't put the connection, but you have been building those dendrites and those neural connections without your left brain being involved at all, other than having to soap up, you're using both sides of your brain. But the right brain's having a chance to develop some connections, saying, hey, I got some answers here.
Yeah.
And some answers come. Something as simple as singing in the shower, so do it. I advocate it.
I love it. I love it. If you want to discover how the Ideal Life's founder, Mark Condon, quit smoking, shed 80 pounds, established a thriving logistics company, and embraced the challenges of becoming an Ironman triathlete, all thanks to the framework we referenced in today's episode, order your copy of his inspiring book, The Ideal Life, today with their website or any major retailer. Begin your journey towards a fulfilling life filled with purpose and achievement. We talked about everyone having creativity, and I think you're spot on. I think that part of it is, and maybe you can speak to this, but growing up, and you said a little bit about it, in school, being creative usually centered on just art class, maybe creative writing, maybe.
Or music, sometimes.
Or music, but even music sometimes ends early, or you're learning a music theory, you're not really having the chance to express yourself musically, oftentimes, in school. And then if you can't draw well, let's say, then you think, well, I'm not creative, which is not true. I mean, I don't think I draw particularly well. My kids think I do, which is, I love that. They won't soon. They'll realize this is a big sham. But you mentioned how sports and arts go hand in hand, and they do. There's, from an athletic perspective, there's so much creativity in sports, the way that people express them. I love soccer in Europe. They use the phrase, express him or herself on the field, which is a great phrase. We don't use the word express in America to talk about sports, but expressing yourself in a creative way, it's amazing, and it's true, and it's all over sports. And then you see it in writing, or you see it in all of these different capacities. People want to think, well, I'm creative. But it is an interesting concept to think about, okay, how do you take what you're doing over here, and how do we put that in terms of the majority of folks who aren't going to take your class, who are not going to do art, but are doing quote unquote normal blue collar work or even normal white collar work when they're doing their thing? How do you make that connection to where they can see, well, no, I have creativity. Here's how I can exercise the right side of my brain to help me. Do you see any connection there? How do you make some movement there?
I've got a whole bunch of suggestions, but you know where it starts is asking, okay, think back to before you were in school, either 5 or 6. What did you love to do then? Did you just tend to bang on everything, start drumming everywhere you went? Everything became a drum. I have one of my sons is a drummer. You knew it from everything. Everything was, drumsticks. Everything was something to drum on. Or a singer, or dancer. Did you just want to twirl everywhere you went, or stick out your toes or,
Right.
what was in there. Did you like me? The paper wasn't big enough, so we colored on the walls. We got into big trouble, but we colored on the walls. My mom had no way of knowing I was eventually going to become a muralist and get paid to paint on people's walls. We joke about it now,
Right.
but boy, when you're 5 and 6,
It's
that's
a
not
different story.
a
That's
popular thing. Because, even having 2- and 3-year-old grandchildren, watching them color, they're serious.
Oh, yeah.
You talk about focus. When one of them is ambidextrous, like one of my sons, whatever side the paintbrush is on is what way they're going to use, or a fork, either way. But my grandson is definitely right-handed. But when he's at that paper, that easel, and he's got some paint on that brush, he's focused and serious.
Yeah.
And we don't see anything.
Right.
And I learned a big lesson because, teaching in a co-op, I had students that would come back year after year. And I had these couple of little boys that I was becoming convinced that they would never learn to draw. And I wouldn't say that,
Right.
but inside I'm like, are they getting anything out of this? Well, something happened over the summer, and they came back in the fall. Without, even blinking, they could draw. And I started trying to find out what happened to them, that prepubescent kind of age between 8 and 12, that they just had something develop in their prefrontal cortex, excuse me if I'm getting that wrong, but that developed to where now they could see what they were doing. Before that, there was nothing wrong with what they were doing.
Right.
And I certainly didn't tell them there was. But there was still a gap between what they were doing and reality. So now they had this connection, but they had these skills because they had been learning how to do it through correct foundational skill building. They could draw. And I'm not saying these are children that are going to be an artist.
Sure.
But there are some connections that are there. If they become a businessman, they're going to know that there's a creative side of their brain that they can listen to and intuit. It's the part of us, if you are spiritual at all, it's the part of you that hears that still small internal voice. You hear people saying, my gut told me. You've heard coaches even say that. My gut, I know you're supposed to be a receiver. And, what gut is he talking about? What's there? And it's that intuitive side that we want to promote.
Yeah.
We want to be more than AI can replicate. And I can tell you, us older generation, I'm not afraid of it. I use Chat GPT all the time. I write stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm not afraid of it because I know something about the right brain that AI can't replace. Yes, it can replace repetition and memorize lists, and it can, do things faster than we can. But it will never be able to replace the human touch, the right brain creative touch. Yeah. And it's when I coach, I don't just coach artists. I coach people who want to find out what their creative spark is. What am I supposed to do? And I can do it through drawing and painting. But sometimes, all right, you like to cook. Let's talk about what you can do with recipes.
Yeah.
And creating. There's so many ways to be creative. Just journaling, just, free form, no editing. This is the other thing. Don't bring that left brain to town here. Yeah,
let it go.
Don't try to correct spelling. Thank you, thank you, spell check.
Yeah, me too. Well, but it's interesting you said that because you think about the ability to not edit journaling, for example. I talk to my kids all the time. We were just in Universal Studios with big Harry Potter people. Had an absolute blast. But we're a pretty schedule is the wrong word. They like to know what's going on. Okay. Which is great. And usually when we set them up with a plan, they're more successful in that they know what to expect.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So the expectations are met. They don't have tantrums, all those things, right? Which has been great for us as a family. But what it does, though, is then there's an expectation that there's always a plan, which I was telling my wife about in line. They're like, so what's next? They were like plans change, and they got a little anxious. And I was like, hey, sometimes we have plans, and those are good. That's great. Sometimes the plan is to not really have a plan, and we're just going to go with the flow. And they're like, yeah, but what about no. It's just to let it go. So it was one of those like aha moments of like we've done a lot to help set them up for success in these areas, but it's also caused this little bit of we need to speak into that a little bit more as a family about we don't have this is free, like freedom, right? So it makes me think about the journaling and even art in some ways. The old like artists won't sign their work because they can't. That means it's done. It's complete. It's what they meant to be. It's meant to be the end, right? Versus it's okay. Like it's okay just to shut it off and let it be, and it's not perfect, and that's good. And that's hard. I think it's hard in our culture, especially when you're held to a standard, right, in everything. And we think that it has to translate to everything, but it doesn't always have to. And that's always not good.
When I talk about creating a safe space and no criticism zone, I'm talking about trying to shut down that.
Right.
I call it bully left brain because we all have that bully inside of it. You're not good. We can't do this well enough, or you're not fast enough, or you should be farther along than now, which tied into pride. But also I hear people say, but how do you get better if you're not criticizing it? And I think it's the wrong question because you can't help but get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't help. I mean, you throw towards a basket enough times, it's going to eventually go in. I did a granny basket shot when I was in high school, and everybody laughed at me. I was short, believe it or not, really, really short until a late puberty, person. So it was easier for me to just, and I did it and did it and did it till I didn't miss.
Yeah, right.
I didn't miss a foul shot between my legs, and it was a problem solved for me.
Yeah.
Now obviously I didn't go anywhere with basketball, but
well, that's not the point.
The point is for me solving that problem.
Yeah.
And doing it enough until I wasn't just laughed at for doing it that way. I didn't miss, and they're not going to laugh at you if it works.
And that's a perspective. I mean, we talk about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And in that, you could look at what we talk about and say, well, that's just criticizing. No. What we're saying is that as even like in art, it shows up for you, right? And you can either look at it and say, well, I'm not good. I'm not an artist. Or, okay, how can I of course I'm going to get better because I'm going to try again because I am an artist. And that's the identity statement we talk about. If you say I'm an artist, just that alone is unbelievable scientifically what it does for you, right?
Wow.
And then when you do mess up, it's not, well, I can't draw, I can't paint. And you probably told yourself, I'm not a painter for how many years until you
Almost
realized
20,
that's not true.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's not, I think in some ways it's like reorienting from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset allows for, and I don't like the word criticism like you're saying too, like not criticism, but allowing ourselves to say, no, I can get better. I can progress because I'm meant to be this, or I love this. I have a passion for this. And if I allow myself to grow or believe that I can grow, then all of a sudden you can do wonders.
We were talking about Duolingo, and I'd been taking German for a couple of years, and I was discouraged, to be honest. Now I was planning a trip. I got to spend 5 weeks in Germany, just got back, and I hadn't re-upped. I hadn't renewed my Duolingo, but I heard over and over how much better my German was because I don't really have have people to talk German to here in America, and my grandchildren are bilingual, fortunately, which has brought a whole nother world of thinking about the brain, how it does. But I realized, okay, I'm still learning vocabulary. I'm still getting better. And I went ahead and renewed. And as I'm doing it now, even though I don't have any other trips planned, it's like I want to get to where I can be fluent at this and whatever it takes, because it is a goal. And having a goal and being goal-oriented absolutely helps. And, and for me and a lot of my clients who are older, that take coaching from me, they've raised their families, they've had successful careers, but there's a part of them that knows something's missing. That intuitive, creative side, however it looks, and discovering what will bring that out. I can't teach people to sing, but I can teach them how to engage their right brain to develop that part of their creativity. Or I can't teach them to play the piano, but I can encourage them and see what happens when they try. And I think everybody can learn to draw. Everybody can learn to paint. It's the desire. Do you want to go through the process?
Right.
And I could learn Spanish, maybe, But I don't have that kind of incentive. I'm not going to Madrid next year, or right. I'm going to go back to Germany, or and this is the eastern part of Germany that used to be under Russian occupation, and so my daughters-in-law's parents never didn't learn English; they learned Russian. And now the girls were born after the wall came down, so they learned some English. But their parents don't speak English. So I'm motivated, you know, to get to know them better. And they have great stories because it's so interesting to us, you know, what they went through and how different life is. I mean, I've been going back to Leipzig enough times to see the growth and the change as the western part of the country poured in infrastructure into that part of the depressed country. And it's fun. You know, there's so many treasures in Europe that we can't relate to in our 300-year-old country.
I know.
Our old city of Charleston, right?
Exactly. I always talk to folks, and I'm like, you know, our city's old for America. You know, like I always have to clarify, you know. Exactly.
Yeah, we were eating in a restaurant that said 11:11. I'm like, what? This cathedral is, you know, or Bach was born in, and he's buried in Leipzig, and so we're in his churches. There's a big cathedral, what do you call it? The not piano, but organ. Thank you. Word wouldn't come. And he had a boys choir that was started in 1212 that still has a school of these boy singers, you know. And there it is, you know, history everywhere you look. And they managed to restore a lot of things. Yeah. And in Erfurt, which is an old Roman fortress, 2,000 years old, and the cathedral is from the 1200s. It's like, wow, this puts things in perspective. But they had appreciation of beauty and art, and every building's different. And I just want to see that for our nation, that part of our culture that has a rich history of beauty and the arts be restored.
Yeah. Well, you walk down, you know, for us in Charleston on King Street, and we're talking earlier about keeping head down, and you look up and you realize how the architecture is unbelievable, and often it's the unbelievable part is the second and third floor, but you never see that because you're looking at storefronts and whatever, which is natural, of course, but it's meant to draw your gaze upward and be inspired by the creator. And so it's such a cool thing to stop for a moment and just enjoy, whether it's nature or whether it's architecture or super old stuff. but if you're in your own space and you're inside your own brain, it doesn't allow yourself to enjoy, to have a different appreciation for things, which is.
Well, if I can say just one thing that your listeners could do.
Yeah, please.
Whether they identify as a creative or not, is to take 15, 20 minutes a day to stroll, to take a walk. And if it is in the city, look around, enjoy, even the storefronts. For 15, 20 minutes, just enjoy being outside, smell the air, smell the roses blooming, crunch of leaves underfoot, or birds tweeting, or, you know, just breathe deeply, and it will psychologically improve your left brain, right brain connections. It's working in your behalf, just doing that. And that doesn't mean don't take your aerobic walk where you're counting steps, but just choosing not to. And then maybe sometime you'll want to bring a sketchbook and just start drawing, or journal, or not. Or bring somebody to talk to, or not. Or bring somebody to throw a ball to and catch, or not. It's a matter of, you know, what could this develop into? But just making a point. I'm going to choose to do this for myself. Just 15. It doesn't have to be hard. You know, it's been chilly, so you bundle up, but still you can do it. You know, and I experienced -11 my last week in Leipzig, going from buses. My sons live the same city, but you have to go by bus and by train, and you're waiting. I said, let's walk to the next. It's snowing, and I never felt cheeks frozen before. Not even growing up in New Jersey did I remember having my cheeks frozen. I said, that's the only thing showing, you know.
Yeah.
But it was still, I made my grandchildren look around, look at the sky, look at the buildings. You know, they're all so interesting, and you know, just having your eyes opened.
Yeah.
It does something to your brain.
It does. We, you know, in Charleston, we always laugh about. I grew up here, and everything was 15 minutes away, which is not the case anymore. But also, you know, you measure things by bridges. We do our kids as a joke, you know, like school's 3 bridges away or whatever. But made it a point to whenever we would drive over the bridges, particularly in the mornings on the way to school, to like call out how beautiful it is. Sun's rising and the water is usually calm and all those things, and it's gorgeous. And I do it because it's a good reminder for myself. I mean, I love the water. I love being able to be here, but also to not take it for granted. It's so easy to when you drive over a bridge, it becomes just like you have blinders on. You're getting to where you're going. Versus this is an opportunity to get outside of myself and to enjoy where we are. So we talk about being sports. I'm a huge golfer. I love golf. Mm-hmm. And I was in Doonbeg, Ireland this past September. And you have kind of two options if you're a golfer and you're in Ireland. If you're good and you can deal with wind, like it's one story. If you're not really great and it's really windy, it's a miserable experience. And the third option that no one really talks about is to just enjoy where you are, regardless of your score. And of course, you want to play good because you're competitive and all those things. But I made it a point to, between every hole and on the hole, to like every single time, I played the same course 6 times, a lot.
Wow.
But to look around and just smile and just to remind myself, like, this is amazing, right? It's absolutely beautiful. It's otherworldly, all those things. And then even further, there's the science behind smiling, as we know, it releases the dopamine, all those things, like the good chemicals we talk about, just smiling. Even if it's not a real smile, it's like actually making yourself smile. So from like the golfer's perspective, it's like when you're having a bad hole, so the next hole is just a smile. But like you're saying, looking around, taking 15 minutes just to like get outside and smile, what it would do for us as a culture, especially us that are like constantly doing, just like to get out and just smile, I mean, would do wonders, right? Would do absolute wonders.
Speak to people.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention one of the benefits is serotonin released.
Yep.
You talk about dopamine, but there's also serotonin, which is the happiness chemical. Mm-hmm. Feeling down in the dumps because it's overcast. Because trust me, when I got to Germany, and it is an overcast country. I mean, we come from a sunny city, but overcast country, it's tough for those of us that are geared towards that. All right, we're going to enjoy our time. You know, Mama's here, Grandma's here. We're going out. We're going up. We're doing. And the Germans do Christmas great. I mean, Christmas market. You know, we're here. We're going to ride the carousels. We're doing the do. And I left them all happier than I found them. You know, it's just that whole attitude. You know, what you're talking about, growth mindsets of just, you know what, I'm going to choose to take every day and spend part of it. What can I do to, you know, feel better today about myself, about my world, about you know, what's going on, and it is good for you.
It's awesome. So if there's someone at home who's listening and like, I really want to kind of explore my right brain, how do they get in touch with you? What is a good way for them to learn from you and take the next step?
I appreciate you asking that. Yeah, Karen DeLoach Art. KarenDeLoach.com/gift. I actually have a book that talks a lot about my theories and stories that I've learned about the arts, and if they do that, they'll get you know I'll get their email, and I'll be able to send them a 3-part podcast that I've put together called Art as Self-Therapy: Wellness Through Creativity, and it's 20-minute episodes where it really talks about how they can. I have even lists of things that they can do to stir up their own creativity, and how to reach me, make a call, and book a call with me, and let's talk. You know, maybe, you know, see if we'd be a good fit together. If I can help you stir up your own creativity and feel better in many ways.
Well, Karen, thanks so much. It's been a joy and a pleasure.
You.
I'm excited to see where your coaching business goes, and you know, continue seeing your art. This is amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.